without our projections. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome. I already expressed we had some Zoom issues.
All good. What's new, right?
What's new? Yeah, welcome. So this is Stephanie Karlovitz. I love her, so I'll just start with that. Steph and I also did some beautiful work together 2020, 2021. And since then, your path has taken quite a trajectory. Can you tell us some of the studies you've been inside of and the kind of work you're doing now? And also, we've been talking a little bit about projections and labels that we use, and like, what does that
mean? It's so profound. It's so profound to have some space and breath around the intellect, because when we're in the intellectual mind, we are in labels, judgment, criticism. We're in our strategic mind. We're in a zone of creating safety, essentially, for us to be able to operate in the world. Mm-hmm. And although it's super useful, it does have diminishing returns, mm-hmm. like all things. Mm-hmm. So, since 2020, I mean, the catalyst to what I'm doing now, I mean, looking back, it all makes sense from the very beginning. However, the catalyst that brought me to the work that I'm doing now, essentially was, I mean, I don't know what to call it. I mean, I had already been awakened, so it wasn't necessarily a spiritual awakening, but I would like to say that it was whatever residue was still there completely left me. So it was a really profound time for me, because I had a moment. It was a moment, November 27th, 2020, where I was in the mirror, and for whatever reason, I said to myself, it was really kind of silly, and I've never actually shared this publicly, but I said to myself, you are good enough. And I'd never done mirror work before. It just wasn't something that I had ever done. And I heard a voice come back to me, which was the Stephanie container, that said, oh, honey, I'll never be good enough. And what that was my understanding that the human was never going to be good enough. Was never going to be as fulfilling as what I truly am on the inside, which is the essence of spirit, the essence of God, the essence of Mother Nature, of prana, of chi, of the Holy Spirit. So I was trying in my life to make Stephanie good enough.
Yeah.
But the ultimate truth was that I am not her. I am, but I'm not. And so this is like, super out there, as but
I think the people here can handle it.
That's what I thought. So that moment changed my whole, I mean, it's not even my life anymore. It's just life. It's, so that moment then also was able to be supported by the fact that I had let my company go, that I had no more emails in my inbox. I went into a cabin in the woods. So, maybe lots, people have these experiences where they get this awareness and it's like, whoa, I understand how it all works. But yet then they go back to work at their 9 to 5, or they kind of go back into their relationship and play the role again. And so I think we all have opportunities for these moments in time. But for me, in that moment, I was able to support and sustain that moment like that. So that led me to, I'm doing a master's in consciousness. I was led to do that. It wasn't something I was looking to do academically necessarily. I did trauma release therapy. I'm a licensed spiritual therapist and work one-on-one with clients, mostly around awareness and consciousness and a little bit of psychology. I don't like to get into the weeds with that. There's enough of that stuff out there. Yeah. So
Yeah, I love it. And like the mental priestess.
Mm,
Yeah, it's such a good name. Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. So tell us about the labels we use.
Mm. Well, I have a little presentation. Is that
Yeah,
okay for
let's
me to
see it.
share? Okay.
Yeah, let me make you a co-host 1 second.
I find visuals really helpful.
Yeah,
And
it's also
visual.
such a the subconscious mind learns a lot through visuals.
Get rid of some tabs here. There we go.
Okay, so you're co-host now, so whenever you're ready.
Okay, cool. Let me go to present. There we go. Okay, share screen.
This is such a treat.
I feel like it's a treat. I'm
Yeah.
being treated. Okay, cool. The labels we love.
Mm.
Okay, this was just, we went through the about me. One thing that might be interesting is that I live a life where like my top priority is my consciousness. I'm not trying, but I just notice when things interfere. And so it led to me living in a van, and I'm now in California, and that being able to be in a practice of detachment and be really in my purest essence. And a van life is not for everyone. Unconventional living is not for everyone, but I came from a place of denying my unconventionality.
Yeah.
Where I lived in a glass and white condo 3 blocks from my work that I built, and really demonized myself for staying in not being able to stay in one spot. And truthfully, the unique essence within me is meant to move around, is meant to kind of flirt with life and really learn about, yeah, that's just my true essence. So for me, it culminated into van life. For a lot of people, it might be the opposite. They're living unconventionally, and actually their true essence for their highest consciousness is actually to be more in a traditional outfit. Maybe they're testing boundaries, and actually that's not quite their essence. So coming into our full essence and love, radical self-love, helps with a lot of this stuff that we're talking about, because self-love is needed.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to get into like some quantum physics here, which is really beautiful. And it's really easy. Quantum physics, maybe it sounds really like rocket science, but honestly, it's just it's not that hard to understand.
Mm.
Essentially, we are, let's say, like in the matrix, which is a common phrase used. When we're in the matrix, when we're in our drama, when we're in victim consciousness, when we're like super stressed, we feel like we're a victim to life, we end up having this view of reality where I am the subject and the other is the object. Everything is an object.
Yeah.
So when we objectify, we say that we're in this narcissistic place because we're not understanding that everyone is like us, that we're all humans. We have feelings, we have desires, we have trauma, we have a unique essence, a life purpose, a path. We're here for a reason. So when we objectify people, places, and things, we kind of negate that beauty. We negate that. And so it feels like everything's an inconvenience to us. It feels like people are either getting us ahead or holding us back. And so in that dynamic, we are in the separation dynamic. We're in a separated consciousness where you and I are different. So it's as simple as that. And so when we're in that state of I am me and you are you, I have a rich internal life, but you don't, you're simple, I can just sum you up, then things start to happen. The opposite of that, or the place we want to be in, that's way more fulfilling and way more let's say, intelligent because we can actually open up to the present, and the present is the most intelligent place that we can be in, is when we understand that actually we are one. And for the longest time in my spiritual development, I understood oneness as we shared the same periodic table. Like, I'm made of hydrogen and carbon, and you're made of hydrogen and carbon, and therefore we're made of the same stuff. I did not understand that there was a life force, what makes you animated, and what animates me, the invisible stuff, is also one. And so I remember that being a layer of like, whoa, when I started to understand that, that was huge. And so when we dip into oneness and understand that the consciousness that's making you and the consciousness that's making me is one. And like I said, I have a life path and a life purpose here, and you have a life path and a purpose here. That automatically brings us, it brings humility, and it brings power, and it brings awe, and all those things bring awareness. So we recognize that between you and I, we're both powered by the same invisible force, and that we're actually creating each other into existence, which is really neat. And so it's not about me unique on my own, I'm fixed, and then you're unique and fixed on your own. And then we both come into relationship, even if it's at the grocery store, and it's somehow separate. Like, you came in with your stuff, I came in with my stuff. There's no dynamic. There's always a relationship. So one way to really understand the oneness concept is Rumi, the great, beautiful Sufi master poet, said that, and this is a very famous line, that you are not a drop in the ocean, you're the ocean in a drop. And so, and Alan Watts says that as the ocean waves, the universe peoples. So people are the universe waving. And in the ocean, when the waves happen, that's the individualized oneness. That is each individual wave. Yes, they're individual, but they come from the seed of consciousness. And so we're all unique waves in the ocean of life force. So what is needed to get out of that subject-object relationship where everything's an object, and therefore when we handle everyone as an object, the opposite is also true. We become objects for the other subjects. So we're in the dynamic. So if you notice that you're being objectified a lot, if you notice that you're always inconveniencing someone, someone's always mad at you, people are taking advantage of you, they're trying to use you to get ahead, that's probably an indication that you're doing the same. So then you're in that dance. You're in that dance. So to get out of that, we have to pull back and come into come into that awareness to be able to see the you and the me playing out. And this is a presence practice, and it's an acknowledgement that we are both the same, but uniquely different, powered by the same thing. So where labels comes in, and where the stuckness comes, and judgment, all that, is when we are in the subject-object relationship. You're fixed, I'm fixed, there's no awareness. And what ends up happening is we end up playing out roles. So I'll be the victim, you be the hero. I'll be, the passive observer, you be the doer. I'll be the mother, you be the father. I'll be the CEO, you be the subordinate. I'll be the, the class clown, you be the jock. So all those roles have a blueprint that play out that's also very boring. I think a lot of us get to a place in life where we do have that awareness, and we're like, you know what? I would love to be more than what you think I am. And it happens a lot in relationship, happens a lot in family dynamics. Like, aunts and uncles decide that you're hyper as a kid and then you're like hyper when you're 50, it's like, no, I've changed. You know? And so we get stuck on these things, but we do it too. And the other thing that happens, and I know Diana is a huge proponent of this, is noticing that usually in this dynamic, we're fixated on the other person. We do not take responsibility for the dynamic, or we do not take responsibility for what we're bringing to the table. And we don't recognize that there is a dynamic playing out perfectly, always perfectly. So what do we do? How do we get out of this? How do we get out of this place of feeling stuck, essentially, in our relationships? You know, example of like, even if you're just dating, you know, we tend to put on a particular role, even at the very beginning, because maybe it's what we're used to, or it's what worked for us in the past, you know? So, you know, I'll be the demure pretty girl, you know, that wants to be taken out. Well, then now I'm going to get the opposite. I'm going to get the very authoritative, dominant guy who's objectifying me because now I've become an object. So how do we get out of this, and what do we do? I mean, the teachings are always the same no matter what. It's to slow down. And I know also Diana helped me with this dynamic in myself of, what do you call it? Not being the spark, but being like the sunrise dating. That always stuck with me.
I love it. And so funny because we were in a masterclass a couple of weeks ago. Yes, it was one of the women who went through Inner Circle, and we discovered like she showed up as like the full sunrise. Like you wake up first thing in the morning and it's the full sunrise, and it's like, whoa, that's intense. But actually the sun rises gradually. Well, and so the other metaphor we had used was like she was this fireworks show. Like on the first day, like boom, 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 so performative, so sparky.
Yeah.
Right. But what we actually wanted was something that feels slower and sustainable and grounded in truth.
Yeah. Beautiful. And so we need to slow down. We need to slow down from the get-go and recognize, you know, it's really beautiful if you recognize this in the other, if you recognize that person showing up to perform for you. You know, they're stuck in a role, and how you can help the dynamic is through your own consciousness. And so when you slow down, when you are able to say, okay, there's going to be a dynamic kind of wanting to come through. And so I want to give that space, and seeing people when you're dating, like seeing them in different environments over a longer period of time allows us to continue that slowness and continue that awareness and continue that ability to recognize where the dynamic will play out, but it's in a way that it's not overwhelming. When we get into playing a role, we're in it. It's so hard to see through it. Then we start to label even more. We're like, oh, he's absolutely a narcissist. Okay, well, we've labeled it even more. Now I am a victim. And so now I'm going to play out the scorned woman victim. You're going to play out the asshole. And now we're further stuck. Or in partnership, it's like, oh, well, now, you know, you're a know-it-all. Well, now I don't know anything because I just said you're a know-it-all. So I've disempowered me. I've disempowered you. And so in heated arguments, or let's say conversations or tough conversations in a partnership, if there can be slowness, like we're not going to talk fast, and I might need to recalibrate at times. You know, notice when I lose my presence, notice when I start to disassociate, notice when I get overwhelmed, and communicate like, okay, I'm getting overwhelmed, like I need a minute. And then having a practice of slowness and presence. And if you're not awarded that, you must take it on your own. So it's our responsibility. So slowing down, bringing awareness around labels, like noticing when you're saying you always do that, or there you go again, because then we're imprisoning the person again. Again, we're imprisoning ourselves because we become the opposite. Whatever we're saying is going on out there, we are slapping labels on ourselves. We're not separate from the dynamic. It's really important to know that.
I'm going to say, take that in for a minute. So you said something really powerful. So whatever labels we are putting out there, how did you say it? Like we are doing that to ourselves.
Yeah,
We
we're labeling
opposite
ourselves
of
the
that label.
opposite.
Yeah. Okay. So when we are projecting onto someone else, we are also then placing ourselves as an object as well. I want everyone to take a moment, breathe that in, and let that land.
Yeah. Beautiful. And I can give an example. I had a partnership where it was actually a very positive label. I labeled the individual as adventurous, as fearless, as incredibly a very wide, expansive consciousness. But by me labeling him that way, I had disempowered myself from all of those qualities within myself. And then, so therefore, I wasn't adventurous unless I was with him. I wasn't dynamic unless I was with him. I wasn't fearless unless I was with him. And so there's a difference between admiring, like, whoa, I admire that in you. And so therefore, there's probably parts of me that are also that way. And that's really cool that we get to experience this together. And if we're not together, I still embody these qualities. But sometimes we can stay in dynamics and partnerships because we've pedestaled the person. You're everything I'm not, essentially. And so therefore, labeling myself as not having those attributes, which is not true. So yes, lovely. Okay. So we take responsibility, we get breath awareness, we slow down. And even if that person is still fixed and still in that place of their own role, we actually give them permission to expand their awareness a little bit. So as we slow down, as we not engage in the role dynamic, and I listen to the person, I really give them space to listen. I actually allow them to change. I allow them to drop into the truth. I give them space to try on different hats, different ways. I observe and I can inquire. And so this is how we build awareness around both individuals. And so with this awareness, we are detached. We're detaching ourselves from outcomes. We're detaching ourselves from the roles, from judgment, from labels, trying to figure someone out. And we're actually available for information. We're available to gather who you really are and all the aspects that you are, and who am I and all the aspects that I am. And in that, the power comes from being able to see that we're all operating from our own truth. And this was huge for me in relationships, recognizing that I've never been lied to. Never been lied to. This was big. And what that means is that everyone is operating from their own relative truth. So the ocean, waves. The waves are a product of the momentum from the past. They're a product of how it hits the reef underneath, right? If the wave is big or if the wave is small, it depends on the wind. That's our experience, our subconscious memory, all of that. So even if someone deliberately is trying to control an outcome by lying to you, it's still in their relative truth. We get in trouble when we take their relative truth and impose it on ourselves. With awareness around, I can gather information, I can listen to how someone is and be in my truth, and then see if it's compatible, or see where the alliance is and see where there's not. So then I can observe that behavior, let's say from like the worst expression, let's say the wave is in a tornado, right? And so it's like, I just came off of tons of bad relationships, let's say, and there's subconscious trauma happening, and the individual's trying to control me and objectify me, and they're really in their role, they're really in their drama. I can engage compassion, and I don't need to be a part of it. And I can see the relative truth in that individual's experience. And with the breath and the slowness that's now around me, I can sink into my relative truth to say, I'm not welcoming or inviting this kind of dynamic in my life at this time, but I totally, honor where you're at, and, blessed be, and in the most highest expression, allowing someone to express their truth, maybe when they haven't felt comfortable in previous relationships, you can deepen your relationship. You can deepen your connection because they feel free. They feel free. They don't feel like you're needing them to be a certain way. You can be free. You can express your deepest fears, and you can express your dreams to someone, and you can be yourself. And when two people can be themselves, truly authentic, then you got something to work with and you have something that's sustainable. And so, this is a dynamic that can come from that awareness. So I just included just some questions. So no matter where you're at, because we're all in different places in many different relationships, the key is not to look at past relationships and say, oh crap, I should have done that different, or man, I'm not in that kind of relationship now. How do I get there? It's not really about that. It's always about our own responsibility first to awareness and presence, but also like coming to a place within yourself and then engaging in conversation with your partner that kind of like brings darkness to light. So a question you can ask is, what do I think of you that isn't relevant anymore? That's huge, because our partners are aware of where we pigeonhole them. It drives them fucking nuts. Right? And they're battling that, and they're defending against their growth. Like, I'm not that way anymore. We go to a dinner party with another couple and we start spitting out the old stuff. Jane, she's always like dirty. I haven't been dirty in 10 years. Right? Or Jonathan's like a handy person, does everything around the house. It's like, maybe secretly the relative truth of Jonathan is like, man, I don't want to do that anymore. Actually, I don't want to be the fix-it. I don't want to be the caretaker. I don't, and so bringing some breath around some questions can help reveal that and allow the relationship to transform. Another question is, what parts of yourself do you not show me because you fear it won't fit my mold of you? Because we've said, well, they're the intelligent one, so smart. So in our society, can you be smart and sexy? Can you be smart and weak or sensitive? Can you be smart and still be a beginner in some areas of life? It's kind of hard, right? And so these labels, these containers, this meaning that we put on things, because it's easy, it's convenient when we're busy, opening up our mindset to a more expansive view can really bring life and aliveness into our life and our dynamics. Another one is, if you felt more free in this dynamic, what would you do? What aspects of me do you not want me to ever change? So how are you holding me to labels? How are you holding me to containers that I've outgrown? Questions to ask in dating. Do you have meditation or awareness practice? This is a big one, because if an individual or yourself, if you don't have a meditation or awareness practice, or a slow kind of way about you in some fashion, then you will likely get into a dynamic of past trauma and your unique essence. There's the good and there's the not so pleasant. But the likelihood of you repeating old patterns essentially is pretty high, because there's not that breath. There's not that space around it. So ideally, you have meditation practice, awareness practice. Ideally, that individual has their own way of creating their own breath and awareness around things. And asking questions like, what roles do you usually play in partnership? Well, I've been the caregiver and I don't want that anymore. Great. Well, are you going to be completely passive? like we just like switch roles. Switching one out for another is not necessarily what we want either. So asking questions. What's the difference for you between being single and being partnered? This is where we start to see where people emancipate out of these roles that they get into partnership, and they feel like they can only be the other aspects of themselves when they're single. And so in conscious partnership, we're wanting the full aspect of the entire human so that there can be longevity, sustainability. We can go through the bumps of life. We can transform. We can be different when we want, and we're still going to be loved and accepted and actually championed for that. How do you view change and transformation? Do you notice a dynamic playing out between us already? You can be on one date with someone and notice a dynamic playing out. You can be on a phone conversation and recognize it. So depending on the person being interested or not, like, are they able to really be meta about the relationship at some point? Not meta intellectually, meta in terms of spiritual meta consciousness. And last one here, do you recognize your part in any unfavorable dynamics in your life now? That's a big one. Instead of my mom's always like this and oh, my brother, can they recognize? And of course, asking yourself these questions are huge. So the truth is, there's a dynamic. Trauma is playing out. Your unique essence is playing out. That recognition alone is extremely helpful in being free in relationship. To evolve the dynamic requires slowness, space, bringing the darkness or the unconscious to light, and detachment from the roles allows new in. That's me. That QR code there, if you want to screenshot it, leads to a consciousness quiz. There's 4 different states of consciousness that I put in the quiz. And so you can kind of see where you're at and the medicine for you at that state and how things can evolve into a higher state, which just means more and more free, more and more yourself, more and more out of these dynamics and labels. And in a way that we're stuck, we want to be free with it. So, yes.
Wow, that was brilliant. That was brilliant. I know we have people watching live on Facebook right now too, and streaming into the group, and people will be watching the replay. I wanted to give an example of something like subtle in helping my own partner, Jack, to change one of his own labels, right? So like one of the things that follows Jack is like, he's busy, always helping someone with something, always doing something, always fixing something. And people come to him like, he's the paperwork guy, he's the tech guy, so already paperwork guy.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be the paperwork guy, not always, right? Like the tech guy, the busy guy. So one thing that I've had to really be aware of is it's easy for me to take advantage of this because it's like, oh, there's like this person who can take care of things in front of me. And that makes sense sometimes. But I have to also bring in my own awareness not to add things onto his plate that deepen him into the busyness story that I know he wants to undo himself from. So I can assist him with that, at the very least, not because I need to coach him or fix him or anything for him, but I can note it for myself and notice where I contribute to creating that story, which, let's be honest, it's not ideal for me either when he's the busy guy.
Mm-hmm.
So it can show up in so many different ways. Sometimes even the things that, like you said, the positive labels or the things that we perceive as positive, but are we actually fixing our people in a role? And my sister and I are really good at this, where if we catch each other, say something to one another that is like, oh, you're always this way. And it's like, that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
And that used to be really true. And if you open your eyes and look at me, who I am today, that's not the case today. And it's such a permission slip for us to call each other out on when we're just using those labels blindly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's that self-fulfilling prophecy. It's that confirmation bias. and we keep playing into the role. And then that opposite piece, I don't know if you've ever read Celestine Prophecy. I'm asking you and anyone who's watching, but he talks about the control dramas, right? So if one's the intimidator, one's the victim, and if one's the interrogator, one's playing aloof, and it can be more dynamic than that. But it's so interesting to see how it really is connected, how we all really are connected.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
always playing out perfectly.
Yes.
Perfectly.
Yeah.
And so, especially if you are someone dedicated to liberating yourself from your own trauma, your own memory and stuff, you can, you can start to play out a dynamic, but having the awareness to be like, oh, Stephanie's playing out that little pattern again. Okay, cool. That's coming out. Where's that coming from? And, I do trauma release therapy in a particular way with clients. There's many different ways to go about it, but essentially we want to try to engage with rest and stillness through the trigger, whatever it is. So that's always the practice. And being able to nourish the self and reaffirm the self is really important in that place. But we can't do that if we are in it, if we are absolutely overwhelmingly in that role. But being able to kind of see it from observation already heals it like 75% because it brings a light to it. I did have another thing to say about what you said. Oh, what was it now? Oh, one practice that really, really, I know helped me. At the time, it was just intuitive. I was noticing myself do it, but I, in hindsight now, see the benefit of what was actually going on. I was in this practice of non-judgment. Sounds simple, but I would go every day from my house in Kelowna. And this is after I came out of the woods and then moved west with a suitcase. And I would, in the morning, like 5 a.m, I'd walk to this cliff, which had this big lake in Kelowna, Okanagan Lake, and a beautiful mountain. And I would practice being void of thought, being void of any previous times I would override the scenery as if because I'd already been there the day before.
Yeah.
So I would notice what was new. And so when I noticed what was new in a place where I was all the time, you start to recognize that we're never, ever the same. Nothing is ever the same. And it happens at such a micro level. So it kind of fools us to think that it is the same all the time, but it's not. And so when something would come into my frame, it was a bird, I would not judge it. I wouldn't say, oh, there's a bird. I'd be like, I was just allowing life to life itself. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't get curious either. Oh, there's a ship. I wonder how many people are on the ship. I wonder where they're going. The mind can go in a lot of places. And then for me at the time, I had no concept of time. So that really helped. So it wasn't like, oh, I only have half an hour. Oh, I only have 10 minutes, but you can do it with just half an hour, just 10 minutes. And so witnessing a family member as God expressing itself, like you would watch the oceans waving. It's like, oh, there's my Aunt Carol today. Wow, look at her.
Yeah.
And letting them life.
Letting them life.
Mm-hmm. Practice of non-judgment, non-labeling.
Yeah.
Can be done with nature, can be done with, anytime you can practice, then it will bleed naturally into your relationships.
I love that. And on the flip of that, what I hear is like maybe a different, like for some people, that access point of non-judgment could be really challenging. Mm-hmm. So like maybe another entry point to the exact same thing could be like exactly what you said, looking at it and seeing it anew. Right. Yeah. Or looking and really just seeing what's in front of you, taking in what's in front of you, letting yourself revel in the beauty of the person or the place that's in front of you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the truth is it is completely brand new.
Yeah.
Even if you wake up beside husband or wife or spouse that you've had for 25 years, it's really enchanting to recognize that you're meeting for the first time.
Yeah.
Because you truly are.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this conversation. It's so relevant. It's so profound, and it's so necessary to give space in all the people we are in relationship with to evolve and shift and grow and like be a dynamic movement, rather than like sometimes I describe it as like there's ice between us, like we're like frozen in a frozen lake and we're stuck in position. And so we just keep seeing each other from that same position until we surrender and detach and let things melt, and then we can start to move around and see each other from different points of views and different angles. So I love this so much. If there are any questions, I know there are a few people watching live, feel free to drop them in the Facebook chat and I'm checking in there. Renee, I know you're here with us on Zoom. You can ask anything, whether unmute yourself or put it in the chat, or I'm gonna just volunteer you here, Steph. If people have questions when they're watching the replay, tag Steph or tag myself or tag us both. And feel free to ask or share your reflections and what you really like want to start integrating from what you are listening to today or when you're watching the replay, so that it's not another training that you watch and like, that sounds really helpful, that's great, and then go on with your day and go back to your same patterns, but rather like to take a moment to really sit with, how do I want to practice this in my life? Not because I need to be better or different, but because it feels good.
Yeah. And I think most of us do very much desire to be free.
Yeah.
We want liberation from our old patterns, from our old stories.
No
I
question.
mean, just at the simple essence of like, we don't want to replay what we already know. Like, we want different. And so the practice here for ourselves is really what liberates. And it's not, we kind of think of projection as, again, the object projecting onto us, but it can't happen this way unless it's going that way. It just is not the way of the universe. So we have to take responsibility for our labels, for our ways of creating containers of ourselves and others. And the liberation doesn't mean that you don't have the role. Like, I can't be a mother. Of course, I can't be, yes, but it's the grip. It's the grip on it. And the fact that it takes up the whole aspect of you. We don't want that. We don't want that. We just want it to be a hat. We don't want it to be a full outfit, like it's just an aspect.
So good. This was beautiful. I couldn't have asked for more. Thank you so much. It feels like such a treat.
Thank you for having me, Diana. I love our dynamic.
It's so good. It's so good. Too many more dynamics like this.
Yes. Yeah. And feel free to reach out. I do have my email there.
Definitely take the quiz. Take
the quiz, see where you're at. There's some really good information there. And yeah, reach out. I'm in the Facebook group, so happy to contribute. And
I'll tag you when we're wrapped up here. I'll tag you so people know exactly how to tag you if they want to.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. All the love. See you soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.